Most of us know the feeling of getting the perfect shot. Time slows down for a few moments, and it's just you, the ball, and the rim. Today, most of these shots are now recorded, posted, and watched thousands of times over and over again on social media. You don't have to be a generational talent to get the attention of colleges or NBA teams. You simply need a social media account and a smartphone to be seen. During a student's time in high school, sporting events are experiences that stand out to many. High school basketball at the varsity level is some of the most passionate and exciting competition in the country. Thanks to social media, more and more sports fans are witnessing the high-flying, fast-paced style of play of the top prospects in the country. College and professional scouts and coaches are able to talk with players around the country and globally and watch them compete with only a smartphone.
Are you active on social media platforms today?
I am active. To what degree? I'm not sure that I meet the standard of today's teenagers, but I am active.
Um, what platforms do you use? Do you use like Instagram, Twitter?
I use Instagram, Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I don't use it often, but I am on Twitter.
And do you ever see like basketball content on Instagram a lot? It's a very popular thing. Do you ever see that while you're scrolling through and stuff?
Yeah, that's pretty much the standard of the pages, the people, the organizations that I follow are primarily basketball related. I've used it now for a while. In the business that I'm in as a recruiter, first at the college level and now here at the high school level. It's so dense with information that it'd be unwise for me not to use those platforms.
But do you think that social media has impacted high school and college and maybe even professional sports in a big way in the past 10, 15 years?
Absolutely. I mean, I think social media has impacted the world and has impacted every sector of society, and sports, athletics specifically, college sports, college recruiting, the business of the NCAA and college sports have significantly been impacted by social media.
What do you think are some positive and negative effects of social media's rise in the sports community?
A good question. I think the positive effects are, speaking from a college recruiter, just access to information, access to videos, access to kids, access to their high school coaches, AU coaches, parents. It's limitless. In the past where, I maybe have a hard time tracking down a kid's phone number, and now I can find him on Instagram and direct message him and get his phone number that way. So the most positive, attribute of social media is the access that it grants, college coaches. Some of the negatives, I think, is, it sort of becomes like a popularity contest. How many followers can you get? I have an 11-year-old son, and he's bugging me right now to hire someone to make a mixtape for him for his from his AAU games. And I'm from sort of a different generation, and I will do it, but I want to make sure that he stays grounded, and just the fact that he wants a mixtape sort of rubs me personally a little bit the wrong way. But that's kind of what this the social media generation sort of has done, and I think it can sort of create some a little bit of a false sense of confidence. I mean, it could sort of, hide, kids from who they really are. And you kind of create a false personality on those platforms. So there are definitely some negative setbacks.
Have your schools in the past or St. George's now, do you teach or promote healthy habits and use of social media to your student athletes?
Yes and no. I think it's done more sort of organically, rather than proactively doing it. And that's something that I think institutionally, from an athletic department and generally speaking, maybe some more education. We do have a brief, like, sort of, like, little workshop on, proper uses of social media. Institutionally, we have policies and protocols in place for code of conduct on social media that sort of, bleeds into the athletic department. But in terms of anything just specifically, we don't.
Okay. Have you ever had to discipline a student athlete due to like poor use of social media?
Huh. At St. George's, no, but at Brown, we did have to, I don't want to necessarily say discipline, but we did have to talk to some of our student athletes about the image that they were portraying, on social media and how that negatively affected them, their families, and our program.
When you were in high school, were you talked to by colleges? Did that differ from today? Like, how did they reach out?
Very different. I remember answering calls on the landline in my parents' kitchen. Various college coaches calling my mother, answering the phone, and then passing it to me. So I mean, it's a complete 180 nowadays on how you reach kids and how we communicate. Totally different from when I was in high school.
And my final question: do you think that social media will continue to be a part of sports culture, and do you think that it will continue to have a positive effect on the sports world?
Again, absolutely. I think, social media is here to stay. I think, the technology will continue to grow. The access that, these platforms, grant the kids, grant coaches, grant parents. I think it will continue to benefit all parties involved. I don't think there's any, turning this ship back around now, where we're full steam ahead. It's a part of all of our lives. And I think that there has to be some sort of education and guidelines on, how to best utilize all of these platforms.
Okay, thank you very much. My first question: are you active on social media, like personally? What platforms do you use? If so,
Yeah, so I would call myself semi-active. I have Twitter that I use a little bit. I think I'm more active on Facebook. Um, those are really the only platforms that I kind of use.
Do you think social media has had an impact on high school and college athletic programs?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as we move forward, especially on both, especially in high school, actually, because there's not much television and there's not the extra platforms that you have in college that you can be on the radio for games, you can be on television a lot. So really, social media is the way to kind of promote your program. So the Twitter account we have, the Instagram account we have for athletics, we use to put out scores and give out information about games and promote our athletes and talk about some of the good things that are going on in our athletic program. So that is our number one vehicle of getting out information about student athletes, about programs, and about the athletic program in general. So in terms of college, I think it's a support system for all the extra platforms that are available in terms of television and radio. So, but for specific teams or for teams that aren't, don't have the option of being on television as much, they probably use social media the same way that we do in high school.
Mm-hmm. What do you think are some positive and negative effects of social media on either student athletes or programs?
Yeah, so I think, positive is a lot of the things that I was just kind of talking about. Like, individual people can sometimes talk about accolades, and like you see a lot of kids now, if they commit to play at a different school, they'll put out like, a little video and just like talk about where they're going. So I feel like, individually, it can be really good if used the right way. And then, like I talked about, as a department or as a team, like each of our teams here at Needham have platforms that are just individual for that team. So like, a parent or somebody will run the Twitter account or social media account and put out scores, give out updates, if they're at games, which obviously didn't happen this year, but typically a typical year would have happened. And then our department as a whole, again, like if there's a venue change for a game or a time change, right now with everybody live streaming games, we put out the links so that, parents and friends and family can see the games that are being played either away or for us. We put out scores and we put out, who had accomplishments in certain games. So it can be really good that way. Obviously, some people have not used it in the right way and have, said something negative about a team or a program or, kind of put something out there that they wish they hadn't have. So, it can be a negative platform if people allow it to be. I think you have to be very cautious about what you put out. And like Mr. Lee and I are always bouncing things off of each other before we post it so that we make sure that we're promoting our program in a positive way, our student athletes, and our teams.
At Needham High, do the coaches or do the teachers promote any like healthy use of social media?
Yeah, we do. We have conversation about it all the time as a department, as individual teams. We've brought in Positive Coaching Alliance to have seminars when we were able to bring people in to be speakers to talk about the positives and negatives and the ways to use social media. And we'll continue to do things like that. So we're constantly working on, speaking to student athletes about how to use social media, speaking to coaches about how to use social media. And Mr. Lee and myself are always, looking at different examples of things that go on in everyday life or in the sports world that we're like, hey, we got to make sure we stay away from that. Or, if somebody did a really good job with something and we want to incorporate that into what we're doing. So, we take pictures and post them. We post videos. We do everything we can to make sure that the state of Massachusetts or whoever wants to follow Needham Athletics gets a bird's eye view of what's going on.
Have you ever had to like discipline a student athlete in the past due to like poor use of social media?
Unfortunately, we have. Sometimes young people make mistakes in terms of their use of social media, and we try to educate as best we can when those things happen, and try to avoid, those things happening again. We're in the business of young people, and so people are going to make mistakes, and we just try to get out in front of it and hope they don't make those mistakes. But then at the same time, if they do, just try to educate and make sure that individual and then those around them don't make the same mistakes. So, without putting people out there, we try to make sure that we use those things as examples of what not to do.
Have you ever noticed like behavioral changes in student athletes because of social media?
Yeah, actually, I feel like there's been situations where like some of our really good players have felt pressure to perform because, they were preseason this or preseason that. And like, sometimes people can get negative on social media if they don't live up to a certain expectation. And a lot of times the student athlete will put that pressure on themselves. But then sometimes people can, kind of say things that will make them feel a little bit more pressure as well. And sometimes I've even had situations where I've suggested some kids like kind of back off social media a little bit just so they're not focused on what others are saying and just focusing more on what they're doing that day, what they're doing with their team, and not getting caught up in like the noise of other people's expectations or what they're saying about them.
And for my final question, I want to ask, do you think that social media will continue to be a large part of sports culture, and do you think it will continue to be a positive influence on athletes?
Absolutely. I mean, you look at, the sports platform right now and everything that's going on in our country, and a lot of, sport athletes going to social media, supporting whether it's voting rights or Black Lives Matter or different things like that. So, it's not going anywhere, and it gives athletes a voice to be able to step outside of what their normal realm is in terms of just athletics. And it also, athletes try to brand themselves on social media, and, so it helps their endorsement deals and different stuff. So I think it's only going to increase. I think it allows, for people to get a better understanding of some athletes, positively and negatively. Sometimes people are putting things out there that, are letting people into their world in a different way too. So like, I think it's definitely here to stay. It's going to continue to grow. I just hope that people, try to use it the right way and in a positive way, and people respect whatever stance they take or voice they have, even if they don't agree with it. It's their opinion, and they can say, whatever they want, and to a degree, as long as it's positive and in the right way.
How do you think social media has positively impacted high school and college basketball?
Yeah. So look, I'm a big believer that, I know everybody kind of vilifies social media, and it certainly has had its negative connotations. But I'm glad you asked me that question, because I think there's lots of positives, and I think when used well, a platform that's that powerful can be used to inspire a lot of young people. So again, I can even just say, from the young people that I've coached, I've seen them, follow strong women that are on social media posting about, healthy, working out, and just, there's a whole sort of vibe around sports and girls' sports and women's sports and things like that I think is great. And certainly on the positive side as well, you see a lot of the social justice and racial equality and things like that are, athletes are using these platforms to make the world a better place, and I think that's a great thing.
What do you think about like any examples of negative effects of social media?
Yeah, so I was a college basketball coach for many, many years, and I think in the recruiting scene, what was a little bit more of kind of a private thing, hey, go try to find the best place for you, whatever. Social media created some pressures, and I'm sure you're well aware of this, right? Your generation is dealing with pressures that mine didn't. In terms of, oh my gosh, well, so-and-so got an offer from so-and-so, and so-and-so get, and it's this whole thing about, I need to post about, so humbled and blessed to have my 42nd offer from, I'm like, are we really humbled right now? So look, not that it's bad to be proud of the recruiting, but I feel like it becomes a bit of a competition and sort of a blown up ego thing, rather than being about, hey, can I go find a great place to be able to go to college and further my education and be better? And so, look, there are certainly those that argue that seeing that can also positively inspire a young person to say, hey, I could get a scholarship. Mm-hmm. So, look, I don't think it's all bad, but there's you want to go down the negative road. Look, complaining about coaches, complaining about your teammates, the negativity about, it's right there. So someone right after a game, venting publicly, right? Which that you never would have had that opportunity X number of years ago, right? You would have had to come home, think about it, talk about it, right? And then if someone interviewed you, you kind of knew you were being interviewed, whereas this is almost unfiltered for a lot of folks. And I think there's been some pretty embarrassing stuff that's come out. Just people not thinking, and just saying things that are just really insensitive or even cruel, and certainly detrimental to their team and their own brand. And so that would definitely be some examples there.
Mm-hmm. Do you use social media yourself?
Yeah, so as a basketball coach, I certainly did a lot from, and it's funny, I was a coach before social media, and then social media came in. And at first, I still remember, when Twitter first came out, why are coaches like, nobody cares what I had for lunch, right? That was my attitude, right? And then I started seeing some of my peers doing a great job of sharing, inside looks at practice and, some positive things about what's going on campus and things like that. I'm like, wait, I'm missing the boat here, right? So I jumped on very quickly and really became a big proponent of, again, using social media to put our best foot forward, to present the story that we want the public to see. And if this is where people are going to come, get their content and engage with, the women's basketball program at Boston College or the University of Denver or anywhere else that I was, then great, let's do it. And now in my professional life, after being, a basketball coach for a living, I'm still in a role in the business world where LinkedIn now more than Twitter, right? But again, I'm engaging with people, pushing content out there about career opportunities and about engagement with our team in really positive ways. And it's the exact same concept. So yeah, absolutely. Social media, I think will never go away. And it'll change and morph in terms of how people use it and what its uses are. But yeah, no, it's certainly a great thing in my life still.
Um, did you or another staff member, like later on in your college coaching career, use social media to find any talent from high school?
Interesting. We certainly use social media to filter some of the talent, right? And that's again one of the things you read all the time, right, in the newspapers is, hey, college coaches are looking at your social media and are they using that to judge you? And the answer is yeah, right, right. Now, is that am I absolutely just writing a kid off because she shows up, on a social media post in a party with a red solo cup? Probably not, right? Is that going in my bank of sort of like looking for a pattern of how she conducts herself? So I'll give you the example. If I go to a game or I go to a practice, and I'm watching how that kid acts. I'm not just watching, can she dribble, can she shoot? I'm watching how does she look her coach in the eye, right? When she gets frustrated, does she pout, hang her head? Does she whine? Does she kick a ball? Does she quit working hard when things don't go her way, right? Like, well, social media is like another sort of view into what's this kid going to be like. And if she's posting things that are negative, detrimental to teammates, complaining, like it's telling me something about how she handles difficult situations, right? So again, whenever I speak to student athletes about that, I always say, look, you guys, your generation is the masters of personal branding, right? My daughters, like, make sure that the Instagram posts are, they've taken hundreds of photos and they're getting the exact right one. I said, well, it should be the same thing, thinking about, hey, what am I putting out there in terms of statements about my team? How do I want to be viewed? But we all have a choice. Whatever I do next is either going to make the world a better place or it's going to be detrimental, right? So again, hey, in that choice, social media is simply just one of those things I do. Right? I might choose to be rude to you. I might choose to be kind to you. Right? It's the same thing that we use social media. So we should just learn to make the best choices we can.
Do you think that both men's and women's basketball have grown in popularity, partially due to social media's coverage of the top high school and college athletes?
Yeah, for sure. The accessibility. So look, when I started in the game, the women's game was really just on the cusp. My first year was the year that UConn won their first undefeated national championship in like 94, 95. And before that, right, like you really had to work to find women's basketball. Like I was a basketball fan, but it wasn't in the San Jose Mercury News where I grew up in Northern California. It wasn't USA Today posted all over, right? And so unless you really knew people, you probably couldn't even, you didn't even really have access to the information, right? So that's clearly changed. Now, mainstream media has done a much better job of covering women's sports, right? But you're 100% right. It's very easy now, if you're a WNBA fan or a women's basketball fan or college or even high school, whatever, to follow the local high school team, right? To follow the local college team, certainly to follow the pros, to follow individual players, right? And get to see sort of what is Brianna Stewart or Kelsey Plum or any of these players really like, and how can I learn from them and things like that. So no question. And look, on the men's side, look, the men's game has always been very, very popular. It's given a very different access, right? There was an interesting book written a few years ago it was called Soul Influence, SOLE, about the shoe companies. And really the premise of that book was that we were precluding there ever being another Michael Jordan by our just rabid search for the next Michael Jordan. And giving 12-year-olds shoe contracts and flying them on what they said the premise of the book was what made Jordan great was that he got asked to play JV another year. People say he got cut from this team. So he got asked to play JV one more year or whatever, and worked really hard and had to be really, really good. So look, has social media hurt some of that in terms of like exacerbated that hey, young kids are being put up on a pedestal and things like that? Yeah, maybe. But it's also, again, given opportunities maybe to people that are, in different areas. Not everybody has the same access to AAU programs and training and coaching and things like that, right? And so, look, I'm a big believer that, the more access and information, if done right, is a good thing, right? And we just have to be smart about how we use it and how we teach people to be able to use these platforms in order to be an advantage to us, not a disadvantage.
There's such a strong relationship that with like teams and the players with social media.
Well, so on a few sides. I mean, look, I think NBA teams, college teams, even high school teams are very intentional about marketing. Like, so you've got a marketing director who works for the Celtics, right? You got a marketing director who works for Boston College, athletics and things like that, right? Well, one of the things that they want to do is make sure that they're putting out great stories about especially on the women's side, but same thing on the men's. People really engage with individuals and personalities and things like that, right? They might be a big fan of the team, but they just love Jason Tatum, right? And they just think, he's awesome. Or they love Elena Deladon, or whoever it is, right? And whatever team she's playing for or he's playing for, right? So the teams are doing a really good job of helping the players market themselves in those ways. And the players, I think, are recognizing that it's certainly their brand is becoming, like, people talk about LeBron James all the time, right? That he is a multinational corporation, right? LeBron James is a brand, right? I mean, and in his case, even literally with the shoes and things like that, right? But for all of us, right, our brand and sort of how people view us, a lot has to do with the social media, right? And look, basketball is a great one because highlights, the dunks, the clips, it's so easy now. And again, on the recruiting side, I'm coaching my daughter's teams, and I've got a bunch of juniors in high school that are all looking to try to play in college, right? And how awesome is it for them to come back from a tournament, right, and be able to put some clips together, post it on, so coaches can see that, hey, great ball movement, made a great pass, and things like that. And again, it's fun to watch, right? I mean, people really enjoy. I mean, basketball's, you're talking about bias, it's the greatest game that there was ever invented, right? And so, hey, the more access we have to being able to see people, think about the highlights that we see now that we never would have seen before because, hey, I was on that Twitter site and I was on that, anyway, so it's fun. You've heard me say it a bunch of times now already. Use it for the right things, use it for good, teach our people how to use it really, really well, which I think is being done. Honestly, I'm not one that thinks that it's the biggest evil. It's just like anything, right? Power can corrupt, right? People that have lots and lots of access and things like that, it can certainly be used, and obviously affecting depression, affecting, negativity. What used to just happen in the locker room, right, now often gets out in the public and it's in the media, right? It's treated very differently. People often say that, hey, maybe some of Michael Jordan's vices he would have been viewed very differently in today's world, right? Because everything he did would be scrutinized in a different way, whereas we didn't have access to maybe some of the things that were happening behind the scenes, which again, I think is all true. But look, it's true for all of us. It's true for, presidents of corporations and teachers and, things like that. So, I think it's a fascinating topic that you're diving into.
Do you think that the relationship between social media and sports will continue to prosper in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'll continue to grow and morph and change. But yeah, absolutely, right? I mean, especially when at the highest levels, it's monetized, right? I mean, you just the whole idea of Instagram influencers, right? It's amazing, right? That people have completely monetized having a large following, right? And that companies are willing to say, hey, Peter, I'll pay you, I'll pay you to wear my stuff because everybody looks at you and they're gonna buy my stuff when you wear it, right? Well, look, basketball is the same thing, and so people are going to continue to grow in those ways. And look, I also think people just enjoy it. Like I said, I have a daughter and her friends who just enjoy the game, and they enjoy following positive role models, and they enjoy the vibe and the style and things like that, which is all part of it, right? It's sports, and certainly the game that I love, right? And basketball has a lifestyle around it, has just a culture, right? And every sport does. Baseball has a subculture, right? Lacrosse, any of these sports, right? Basketball certainly is one that's glamorous often, right? There's reality TV shows about basketball wives and all these things, but yeah, look, I don't think it's going anywhere, and it will continue to change as there are more and more different types of vehicles and platforms and things like that, and smart people will figure out how to use it in the best ways.